Maria Delgado stared at the letter, trembling violently in her injured hands that morning. Her name was on a loan application she had never signed or seen before. The HOA had somehow used her identity to fund a private luxury pool. She gasped loudly, pressing her palm against her chest in disbelief and fear. This new community pool sat gleaming behind a fence she could never enter. Maria had moved here 6 months ago after losing both legs in combat. She expected peace and dignity, not theft disguised as neighborhood improvement projects. Diane Whitfield smiled coldly whenever Maria asked simple questions. Diane ruled the neighborhood like a queen, demanding total unquestioned obedience from everyone. She fined families for mismatched mailboxes, uneven grass, and slightly faded curtains. Maria's wheelchair ramp had been called an eyesore, violating strict community aesthetic standards. Diane mocked veterans publicly, calling their service medals worthless decorative neighborhood clutter pieces. Maria's husband Carlos clenched his fists every time Diane spoke down to them. He worked 2 jobs just to afford their modest 3-bedroom family home. Their daughter Sophia often cried after hearing neighborhood kids repeat cruel HOA comments. Diane had specifically targeted immigrant families, calling their homes inappropriate for proper neighborhoods. Maria called the bank, desperate to understand the fraudulent loan attached to her. The representative confirmed her social security number financed construction of the new pool. Her hands shook as she realized someone inside HOA leadership had stolen everything. Carlos rushed home early, his face pale after hearing his wife's frightened voice. Sophia watched her parents argue quietly, confusion and worry written across her face. Neighbors whispered about strange paperwork appearing mysteriously during last month's emergency board meeting. Frank Sutton noticed Maria crying near her mailbox. He approached gently, asking what happened, his weathered hands resting on his cane. Maria explained everything, her voice cracking under disbelief, anger. Frank's jaw tightened as old memories of unfair authority surfaced inside his mind. He promised quietly that he would help her uncover the painful, dangerous truth. That night, replaying every humiliating interaction with Diane Whitfield, she remembered forms she signed during a community welcome meeting months earlier. Diane had personally collected paperwork, claiming it was standard new resident procedure. Maria never imagined those documents would become weapons used against her trust. Carlos searched online forums, discovering other residents reporting suspicious missing personal financial information. Several families described unexplained credit inquiries after joining this very same neighborhood. Anger replaced fear as Maria realized she wasn't Diane's only innocent victim. She decided enough was enough, vowing to expose this corrupt, abusive power. Frank suggested contacting a local journalist who specialized in uncovering community fraud cases. Maria agreed, tightly against her trembling chest. Sophia hugged her mother tightly, whispering that everything would somehow be okay. Maria kissed her daughter's forehead, promising justice would eventually find its way home. Outside, under moonlight, mocking every struggling family nearby, Diane's stolen funds had built something beautiful from someone else's painful suffering silently. Maria stared out the window, anger transforming slowly into unstoppable fierce determination. Tomorrow she would fight back against the woman who stole her identity. Morning sunlight poured through curtains as Maria prepared documents for her investigation. She organized every fine, notice, and threatening letter Diane had ever sent. Carlos photographed each page carefully, building an undeniable timeline of harassment evidence. Frank arrived early, carrying his own folder filled with suspicious HOA financial records. Together they noticed irregular deposits matching dates Diane collected resident personal information. Maria's hand steadied as purpose replaced the fear that consumed her yesterday. She called the local journalist Frank recommended, explaining everything in careful detail. The journalist agreed immediately, sensing a powerful important community story. Renee requested copies of every document Maria and Frank had gathered together. Meanwhile, unaware her crimes were finally unraveling quickly, she bragged loudly about the luxury pool during another mandatory community meeting tonight. Residents clapped nervously, afraid of fines if they appeared insufficiently grateful or enthusiastic. Maria sat quietly in the back, watching Diane's confident smile with growing anger. Carlos squeezed her hand gently, reminding her justice required patience and careful strategy. After the meeting, concern about unpaid violation fines. Maria calmly asked Diane to explain why her identity funded community pool construction. Diane's smile faltered slightly before she dismissed the question as ridiculous nonsense entirely. Other residents nearby overheard, exchanging confused glances filled with sudden growing suspicion. That night, banking officials investigating identity theft within homeowner associations. She discovered Diane previously worked at a financial institution before becoming HOA president. This explained Diane's disturbing comfort manipulating sensitive personal banking information so easily. Maria felt sick learning someone trusted with leadership had calculated this betrayal deliberately. Frank revealed Diane had also stolen his late wife's identity years earlier. He never had proof until now. Watching Maria's courage reignite his own determination, Sophia overheard her parents discussing the investigation, asking innocently if Diane would disappear. Maria hugged her daughter, promising bad people eventually face consequences for their actions. The following week, detailing HOA financial corruption allegations. Neighbors gathered outside their homes, phones buzzing with shocking shared community news. Diane's perfect image cracked instantly as residents demanded immediate transparent financial explanations. She tried denying everything, claiming jealous neighbors invented malicious lies against her leadership. But evidence mounted quickly as more victims bravely stepped forward with similar stories. Maria received calls from frightened families, finally feeling safe enough to share experiences. Each story painted Diane as calculated, manipulative, in absolute power. Carlos contacted local police, requesting formal investigation into possible large-scale identity theft. Detectives reviewed Maria's documents alongside Frank's records, recognizing patterns suggesting serious organized fraud. They contacted the FBI. Since stolen identities crossed multiple states and financial institutions, Maria felt overwhelming relief mixed with anxious anticipation as investigators took her seriously. Diane noticed unfamiliar cars parked near her house, panic flickering across her expression. She began deleting emails frantically, unaware investigators already secured crucial digital evidence beforehand. Maria watched from her porch, finally believing justice might genuinely reach her family. Tomorrow, for both Diane Whitfield and Maria's struggling family. Federal agents arrived early, parking unmarked vehicles outside the luxurious community pool entrance. Diane stepped outside, confused by their unexpected serious professional sense. Maria watched from across the street, her heart pounding with overwhelming nervous anticipation. Agents presented warrants, explaining Diane faced multiple charges involving extensive identity theft fraud. Diane's face drained of color as reality finally crushed her arrogant confident composure. She protested loudly, insisting board members alone weren't responsible for these serious crimes. Investigators revealed other board members had knowingly assisted Diane's elaborate fraudulent identity scheme. One by one, remaining HOA board members standing nearby silently. Neighbors gathered beside the very pool they funded. Maria stepped forward slowly, her wheelchair wheels crunching gravel beneath bright morning sunlight. She locked eyes with Diane, refusing to look away from deserved painful consequences. Diane whispered weak apologies, but Maria's expression remained calm, strong. Frank joined Maria, placing a comforting hand gently upon her trembling, tired shoulder. Carlos held Sophia close, explaining quietly that justice finally arrived for their family. Agents escorted Diane into the vehicle as reporters captured every dramatic emotional moment. Renee Castillo stood nearby, documenting the historic downfall of corrupt neighborhood leadership today. Residents erupted into quiet, relieved applause. Finally free from years of suffocating fear, Maria exhaled deeply, releasing months of anxiety she carried since discovering the fraud. The community pool, once a symbol of theft, now represented hard-fought justice. Officials announced funds would be returned to victims through proper legal restitution channels. Maria received an official apology along with full restoration of her stolen identity. She used her settlement to establish a support group for HOA fraud victims. Frank finally received justice for his late wife after years of painful waiting. Sophia proudly told classmates her mother fought powerful people and somehow actually won. Carlos hugged Maria tightly, whispering how proud he felt watching her incredible strength. Diane awaited trial alone, stripped of authority, friends, and her false community status. Her once gleaming reputation crumbled completely under undeniable evidence and furious public outrage. Neighbors who once feared her now spoke openly about reclaiming their entire community. The HOA dissolved temporarily while honest residents organized fair, transparent. Maria became an unexpected community leader, helping rebuild trust among frightened, struggling families. She often visited the renovated pool, now open freely to every grateful resident. Children laughed and played where fear once silenced entire families for far too long. Maria watched Sophia swim happily, finally feeling safe within her own beloved neighborhood. Frank sat nearby, smiling as justice transformed painful memories into hopeful new beginnings. Renee's article inspired other communities to investigate similar hidden corruption within their associations. Maria often repeated one simple truth whenever someone thanked her for incredible courage. Power without accountability eventually crumbles beneath the weight of undeniable, persistent truth. Justice may arrive slowly, but it always finds those who refuse to surrender. Maria's story became proof that ordinary people can defeat extraordinary abusive corrupt power. And in that sunlit neighborhood, hope finally outweighed fear forever after that day.